James Carter, how are you doing?
Brother Sean, it is such a pleasure to be able to reconnect with you again and to be saturated by presence of, well, the cyber presence anyway, of folks over at OSU and beyond. And just trying to keep it together. And it's nothing but forward motion, no matter however you put it. He's going to provide.
So, how's your family?
Family's doing quite well. Starting with the moms, she's on her way to becoming 94 a month after next, still ruling the roost as usual. And
Wow.
wife and two kids are doing cool. My kids are 16 and 20 respectively, and one's in going into the 11th grade, and my daughter's going into her junior year at college,
Wow.
MSU.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So, I'm trying to think of when we met. I mean, it would have been in Detroit. It seems. I think maybe we were playing. I'm trying to put this together. You might be
I
clearer
can put
on
a
this.
point on
Yeah.
it and say that it was probably around like 90, 91 when Whitaker had the octet happening, and
Right.
you brought over the police market to
Okay.
be exact,
All
and
right.
then
Yes.
that led to the addition at the 91 Detroit, well, the Montreux Fest, when you were playing, and we were playing that arrangement. I think McCoy Tyner's big band was the big deal of that particular year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's coming back to me, and we've bumped into each other a few times since then.
Mhm.
The most recent time was when you were a guest artist for the Ohio State Jazz Festival, and that was great. You sounded great, band sounded great, and it was nice for my students to have that opportunity to interact with you. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But it seems like probably a couple times in Detroit when you were back from tour or something, and I just happened to be in town for something. It seems like we bumped into each other a couple times, and we've
Yeah,
had
we've
some.
been doing the this and
Yes, and I was, and we had some a couple really interesting conversations on the phone, talking about horns, vintage horns, talking about flutes and things. You're a real
right.
saxophone geek. Like you
I'm a
really know a lot
saxophiliac.
about. Ah, okay, I see. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe about some of the horns that are in your collection, have been in your collection, maybe some of the horns that you've played? Uh, yeah,
Uh, well, currently, as of right now, since 2006, I've been with P. Moriat
yeah.
saxophones, and under the auspice of Alex Shea out of Taiwan. And I actually met them 2 years prior at the, I think, what was going to be the very last IAJE conference in New York. They were set up at an exhibition hall inside the, I think it's the Hilton Hotel that was over there on 6th Avenue and 53rd. And I didn't really get a chance to talk with the individuals personally, but I saw what they had set up, and I copped a couple of their brochures, and said I'd get back in touch with them. And at that particular point, Monteverde Music out of Greeley, Colorado, was their national distributor under the auspices of Roger Greenberg. And I got in touch with him, who eventually put me in touch with the president, Alex Shea, in Taipei. And a couple years later, they agreed to come to Sam Ash, who also had quarters at that particular time at Manny's Music. And I checked out the first acts which was their tenor 66R, that had a couple flaws in it, but I dug it with the flaws and all, and I said, no, you ain't getting rid of this one. I'm taking this one, and I agreed to hook up the following month with Greenberg in Greeley, Colorado, and I went to his house and checked out what would eventually become my first soprano, alto, and baritone to complete the lineup at that particular point. And what I really care about with P. Moriarty at that particular time was that Alex was a hands-on, or is a hands-on musician in addition to being the president. I mean, he's not just overseeing, saxophone, the bottom line numbers and all that. He's actually in the trenches. He's did his work up at Berkeley, rolled his bones here in various jam sessions, and just checking out and really hobnobbing with individual musicians to find out what could make his axis better. And one of the things that I told him prior to signing on the dotted line, so to speak, was I wanted to do more than just say that I play these instruments. I wanted to be a part of their development, possibly being able to help cultivate existing models, also to be able to just help the brand, because I like the infrastructure of the company. I like the materials that they were using. I like the setup. I went over to Taipei for the very first time in '07, and was able to see other axes that were not in America as of yet, but that were there. That, man, some of these axes have never made the actual fleet. Like they had a solid copper baritone, for example, that was just killing. But obviously, baritones and copper, the metal's just too fragile. But the sound is just so sweet. It's almost worth the sacrifice if it takes a dent or something like that. Just the sound that it makes, the resonance, the possibilities of tonal complexity were like mind astounding. In addition, they also had what I had taken into my own auspices and made it the one of the Carterian models. It was formerly known as the SLG horn, which is a sterling silver with 18 karat gold overlay. And that horn just sounds ridiculously full, rich. It's just beyond belief, when you really play these axes against even older horns that have already proven themselves. I mean, they stand on par with them, but could use little things here and there, and swedging here and there, more careful attention to the key work. And, eventually over the years, they've gotten quite a few things together, but I'm still working with them.
Yeah, I really dig those horns, and a couple of my students have those horns. It's hard to, it's hard to make a strong argument against those horns. They're very affordable, and they play really great. They're just really great horns. Yeah.
But I will say though that you can't get rid of the classics, and
yeah.
I keep my classics on hand, and the classics such as the Mark VI, the Balance Action, Super Balance, they keep me rooted. The Con 10Ms, the Cons, the Kings, Buchers, they keep me rooted, in terms of what got us here in the first place, and particularly some of the axes I own that belong to some of the greats, like Chuberry, Don Bias, Beans Bowles. I have actually, within the past year or so, I think I have arguably Rahsaan's Roland Kirk's first King Super 20. And it has a couple of crudely put on keys that are just a little left of the left hand pinky cluster that enable you to key F and F sharp. And I've kind of I put it down, I guess you could say I've narrowed it down to this one picture where Rahsaan has a process in the early 50s, because the horn, according to the serial number, was made in 1953. And the later Super 20 that he played, obviously, is a single neck that was made probably right before or during the first part of the move to East Lake, Ohio, for King, out of Cleveland. But this horn that I have is made in Cleveland, obviously, and I think this was the horn that he was using in the early, more mid to late 50s, before he switched over to Selmer and then eventually back over to King, tenor speaking,
Strange coincidence. We're talking about this now. Is I played a gig a couple weeks ago at Rashawn's sister's house, because she lives in Columbus, and now I know that that he has been particularly influential in your playing. Someone that you've checked out, that you listen to. What about his playing is, has, in particular really spoke to you?
Oh, wow. Rahsaan is history, and more important than that, he's history in the tradition. Because for most folks that don't know, I did a lecture back in 1998 back at Orchestra Hall in Detroit, Michigan, called Saxology, in which I actually demonstrated the actual creation of the saxophone. It was a dramatization using the bass ophicleide, which Adolph Sax's father, Charles Sax, made, because he was a maker of brass instruments, and at which time Adolph Sax was going to school for woodwinds. So I superimposed the bass clarinet mouthpiece onto the bass ophicleide, which gave you the principal bass tones, which through his finessing became the first bass saxophone in the key of C. So the bass saxophone was the very first instrument of the saxophone family. Going in tradition, I talked about the evolution of the saxophone coming from Kemet in 2500 BC in the form of the Zumara and the Matsura, which were dual columned instruments that were reeds. You played with reeds, and they had the individual finger keyholes.
Yeah.
And you would fast forward to 1300 BC, and the invention of the argul came about, which was also a dual columned instrument, but the difference was they had two columns that were different lengths. One was the smaller one, which was the chanter, and the longer one, which of course was the drone, which provided the bass accompaniment or the humming tone, which you could say are the basic principles for what would later become the bagpipe. Yeah. And of course, from there, fast forward even a bit more into the future, came the chalumeau, which was a direct forerunner to the clarinet. And of course, from there, as we aforementioned, we had the saxophone that came about as a result of the hybrid. So that being said, with the dual column aspect in mind, Rahsaan was already in the tradition by playing more than one axe at the same time. And then there were individuals that were before him, like Ernie Caceres and Wilbur Sweatman, who played 2 and 3 clarinets at the same time prior to Rahsaan even being born. So it wasn't that far off, and when you look at him and the way that he elevated that multiplicity, if you will, speaks beyond words, and also coupled with the fact that he had the musical history, the encyclopedic knowledge to apply at any given time to back it up. Just spoke as an omniscient, omnipresent individual on his axe or on any of his axes, and could do it with conviction. You know, I mean, every time I listen to like Mingus at Carnegie Hall in particular, where you know he had cats like Blewett, John Handy, George Adams, you know, to hang with on stage and to basically be able to make an individual statement on his own every time he stepped up to the mic. And it wasn't, to me, it wasn't about any showing off or anything. It was just the fact that he was doing and he was being, you know, and he took and continues to take pot shots from it. I've seen certain things on Facebook and Instagram where somebody's posted something for him, and they, you know, somebody out of the blue would just say, "Oh, that's a clown. What the hell?" You know, and that, you know,
Yeah.
it's for individuals that are that damn superficial and can't really look at. First off, that's a hell of a feat for anybody to pull off. I've done multiple saxophones and stuff before. I just never advertised it or did it, you know, in public after I guess you could say the mid 80s.
Mm.
But to do that, and also on top of that, be sight impaired, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a miracle in and of itself, you know. And speaking of which, that saxophone concerto that he's done, where he just plays continuously for like 22 minutes without a breath, you know,
Yeah.
and going through the entire history of this music, you know, it's just freaking flawless, and it just gives you, hey, I ain't got no excuse.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, in your playing, so you're like you have developed a lot of what modern saxophonists would characterize as obscure facility or obscure chops, stuff like slap tonguing, you know, your circular breathing capability. And the thing with your circular breathing that I've always been impressed by is that you're not just holding a note out. You're like circular breathing and you're playing language. And that's something, it's not a gimmick. It's actually something that's critical to the idea, the shape of the line that you're trying to play, you know, what you're trying to describe, as opposed to, hey, I can circular breathe, check it out, you know. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
bro, I want to thank you for that because I think one of the things that really jacks us up, and I try to bring this out as much as I can in master classes and on one-on-ones, is some of the terminology that we use and some of the ways that I could say instrumentalists as well as spectators have a
Hmm.
tendency to just cheapen whatever you do artistically, you know,
Hmm.
especially if it's out of the ordinary, or if it seems like, oh, look at, like you saying, look, ma, no hands, no lungs, or whatever, you know. But the thing is, like with the upper range of the instrument, when you use terms such as falsetto, altissimo, I think that first off, with falsetto, I mean, the root word is false, like you're breaking the law. So
Hmm.
somewhere subconsciously, when you say, okay, I'm going to deal with my falsetto or my altissimo, you know, it immediately puts like, I'm breaking the law. I'm actually not using the correct fingerings in order to get this particular note that, you know,
Hmm.
it's above high F. And I tend to say that, okay, folks, we're going to deal with the extended range, you know,
Yeah.
and immediately that unlocks in your head that we're moving upwards, as opposed to saying falsetto, where it's like, okay, I'm breaking the law, or I'm doing something that's false or that's against the conical shape of this instrument. I'm actually
Yeah.
bending
Yeah.
it to
And
my,
right, another one of those terms is like false fingering.
yeah,
You know,
and
yep.
and as a result, I think at the base of learning that way, you have a tendency to I mean, you might get it for whatever the sound is and all that, but to have it in your head that, you know, I'm extending the range, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm extending my range and I'm going up another 2 octaves because I got the right mouthpiece and reed combination along with the fingerings, as opposed to, okay, I'm breaking the saxophonic law by playing on a bass saxophone anything above high F, even though on a con I'm mostly keyed to like low E, high E flat, you know. So how am I
Mm-hmm.
going above E, F, and all this? You know, I can't do that, or you know. And I just think from a mental standpoint, if you find yourself using those terms before you actually try to apply it, it makes you sound that much purer. I mean, you can think back to the early '90s where cats were, and even sometimes today where individuals, you hear them on record, or on CD, on disc, or whatever, and they're playing upstairs, and they're where they gotta actually sound like they're crying into the instrument when they're playing
Mm.
upstairs like that, as opposed to practicing those notes as if they were open C sharp. You know, I mean, they should be that familiar to you and not sound that freakish. And I think that's the mental aspect is part of the battle in unlocking upstairs and unlocking any of the techniques that anybody can find and, you know, make their own, you know, and honestly make them their own, you know.
Yeah.
And it's coming. And I think as a result of that, it comes from a more human and a more humble place. And the listener, whether it's an experienced musician or if it's somebody that's just off the street or whatever that's just getting hit for the first time, hears that sincerity in it, but probably can't describe it, but knows, hey, I dig that, you know.
Yeah, your use of some of these quote unquote extended techniques, or whatever we want to use, you know, however we want to talk about them, multiphonics, circular breathing, slap tonguing, extreme altissimo range, you know, like key clack, even like you find some really interesting and unusual ways to get at stuff that is is very again, all of those tools seem to be well assimilated into your message. Like, it's like what you're saying is what's most important, and you're using these tools and these other tools to say that, and they're a necessary component of trying to say what it is that you want to say. And so that's always been something that's been, you know, I've admired about your playing, and you know, and the fact that like almost nobody can play the way that you play.
I got to give a shout out to my brothers at that particular point because I'm the youngest of 5 in my family. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, all of which are musically inclined. And my brothers actually went on to take the professional yoke of musicianship, whereas my sisters, my oldest sister Virginia, passed when I was 5. But she was a hell of an alto singer, and you know, and I can't say I'm gonna tear up if I start talking about Jenny. But my younger sister Priscilla played piano, flute, and piccolo. In addition, she also sang as well. And she traded it in for a corporate job at Sony, which she just recently retired from after 30 some odd years out in California, and came back to the D. And that was it for her. But as far as my brothers, Robert and Kevin, and particular Kevin, um, great classical baritone bass singer, um, but plays guitar, and he wound up playing with various groups of the 70s and early 80s. Played with Parliament Funkadelic, played with the Floaters, played with Five Special, and so early on, I would listen to what he was listening to, which basically was his two heroes were Jimi Hendrix and Carlos Santana. And that's always been in my head. And of course, when Problem and Funkadelic came into the mix, I was going to nursery school, listening to Chocolate City, getting ready to go to nursery school with a Tabernacle over there on Beechwood and Beechwood Cobb. So I had a very sordid early, I guess you could say early pre-adolescent life as far as that was concerned. Those are like early influences, you know, even before I picked up an actual instrument. You know, my brothers had a group together called Stahim in the mid 70s. And what they were basically a cover band that was playing everything. I mean, Grand Funk Railroad, the aforementioned Parliament Funkadelic, Isley Brothers. I mean, whatever was popular at that particular time, they did a cover version of it and added their own thing onto it. And they were playing at various society events. They played at Rooster Tail, Kings Row, which was over there on Myers, you know, supper clubs and whatnot. But I was always that pest that was downstairs pulling at mics, wanting to get in the mix and all that, you know, Ma, come get this kid, come get James, you know. And this is, like I said, this is before any instrument came about. And lo and behold, the saxophone chose me. You know, that's basically what happened. And I say that with utmost conviction because of the fact that it was God that came through and through various stages said that the saxophone was going to be your instrument. And eventually that turned into the woodwind family. But I heard the saxophone as a result of hanging with my mom while she was cleaning. And it's always seemed like when jazz was on, Mom was at her coolest, you know. Meanwhile, when everything else was on, Mom was just yelling at everybody else. But when that jazz would be on, you know, and Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday or whoever would be singing, you know, she'd be doing their chores. Oh, sing it, baby, you know, yeah, you know. And for the most part, there was a sound that always came at the end of one of the vocal renditions that she was listening to, and that sound was the saxophone. So I heard the instrument first. Then when I actually saw a picture of what one looked like, courtesy of the record covers, the albums, you know, as opposed to looking through jewel boxes and shrink wrap on the CD, which you don't get the same effect from. It was in pictures, you know, and to see, you know, a Selma that was fresh and pristine, had the engraving, and it looked like the gold pimp chalice that it was, you know, you know,
yeah.
had a cat posed on the side like finger banging you or holding it and just, you know, looking cool with it. I mean, it was just a oneness, you know, where that you desired for that connectivity of having that extended appendage, you know, like that, and to be looking cool, you know. So I saw it, and then I saw some other incidents, such as like this old omnibus from the 50s that used to come on back in the 70s called Shana Na, and the large white cat named Lenny was the saxophonist on there. And I kind of dug him as well because he was always playing the you know, the saxophone solos from the 50s, like the when they did the coasters, like Travel Down, you know, he was playing all that type of stuff. And then not to be done yet, one of my oldest brothers, saxophonist from his horn section, came to live with us for a while, and he brought with him soprano, alto, and tenor, which are all three were Stelmers. Alto in particular was a factory gold-plated Mark VI, and always used to go for that freaking Mark VI. And I assemble it just like I see on the album covers and all. Even though I didn't have one of my own at that particular time, I knew how to assemble it just by looking at the album covers and, oh, this goes there, and this got to come out here.
I trust that you've enjoyed the video so far. Please subscribe, comment, share, like, and also you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description, if you'd like to further support. Thank you. Now back to the video.
Come out here. And short of having the mouthpiece on, I knew it had a strap. So he stayed in my old room, which had a full-length mirror in it. And so I was able to get that album cover look where I was able to hold on to it and, just pantomime with it for quite a while. And then they would, yell for me to come down for dinner or whatever. And I had to put it up right away. And one day, I just became totally oblivious to what was going down. And his name was Charles Green. And he came in and saw that I had his horn, this expensive ass horn in my hand. He, what you doing with my horn? I was like this with it, like, And he looked and he said, okay, put my horn back, man. And he watched me put this horn back and plug in, key clamps on, neck over in the separate, compartment, put it in there, and I closed it up and and he took me downstairs immediately after that and said, your son wants to play saxophone. And that's how it happened.
Yeah, man.
So I'm saying that to say that I came from a musical environment that was a part of the family. This is like a part of the family thread. And very blessed for that to happen. And for those people that do have that and or have the potential to have it, you should definitely cop it, because particularly in these times, it'll definitely keep your ass seriously grounded, centered, give you purpose. And I'm just very grateful that, the people that have come into my life as a result of it. And it just isn't about just playing and jamming. For me, like I said, it's a family thing. And as a result of me being able to play music and to gain the proficiency that I have at this particular point, I was able to meet my soon-to-be wife at the Jazz Festival. We met August 31st, 1989. And we married 7 years later.
Yeah.
So at the ultimate degree of the arts is not only thought-provoking and something that gives you, it's something that gives you solace. It's something that enables you to celebrate. It's something that enables you to feel optimistic that there is a higher being that is, looking over us in the midst of even the lowest of humanity's moments, and tells you that there is life that will be, this too shall pass. And my instrument making has led me to being able to have a wife and to be able to produce life in the form of our two children and to have a union. That's the ultimate of what this music and the arts in general is really about. Not just jamming and kicking butt and taking names and all that stuff. I mean, all that's nice, collateral happenings, but ultimately we got to be out here as the front line to give folks hope and to give folks other avenues of thinking. Turn off CNN 24/7/9 or whatever the numbers are, and really get into each other.
Yeah, I've said this a few times during these interviews, but it's an idea that just keeps coming back. But in music has facilitated every good thing in my life. Every good relationship, every relationship. Mm-hmm. My living, all the stuff that I own, my wife, my son, the house that I live in, everything that I have that means anything came through music, came through a passion and love that I had for music, and that blossomed into all of these other things. And I cannot think of a single profession, pursuit, way of life, however you want to characterize what it is that we do. I can't think of another career path where I would create so many instantaneous friends. Like instantaneous friends. You play one tune. You play, one hit with somebody. You play two tunes and it's something that's just locked in there forever.
Yeah.
And you haven't seen, guys that you played with 10 years ago, you see them again and it's like you didn't even it's like, you've been talking the whole time.
Yeah, you've been tuned in, but you just haven't been within
Yeah.
physical contact with one another. And it's like, and that is mystical in that sense, where, and I've always thought about this, if I was able to reunite with previous bands and whatnot, to be able to pick up where we left off and to continue to, and I guess you could say that's pretty much getting ready to happen now once the veil gets lifted from, further lifted from this COVID situation, and my band gets back together, because Organ Trio, I think we're really going to be on lock when that actually happens, and it's going to be seriously like a family reunion of sorts. I mean, not only from the physical aspect, but also from the musical standpoint. My son plays alto and a little baritone, but his main gig is skateboarding and gaming online with his friends. And I mean, he's serious about his boards. I mean, he changes his trucks, changes wheels, and checks out ball bearings and this and that. I mean, he's a skate tech and all. And I don't push the saxophone on him, but he's been playing for the past few years, and he's in his high school's symphonic orchestra. And for the very first time this past semester, we had a virtual spring concert, which consisted of this one tune, Make the Garden Grow, which the band director was really tying into this recent COVID situation and trying to put an optimistic spin on it, basically. But the gist of it is that because of the COVID situation, they had to send the part, the PDF of the actual part he was to read, and a track, an accompanying track to play along with. And he plays along with it, records it, and submits it back to the teacher, who then turns all the parts over to the webmaster that's going to put them together and splice them, this, that, and the other, and include everybody in. And then once that was done, they sent a link out where we were able to view, this piece of like almost 4 minutes. And I really thought that this isn't just a disease about the physical aspect of us, being deteriorated, being in a deteriorative state, but also culturally. Because if that was my son's first year of instrumental music, he would not know what the blend of a saxophone section or his section or anybody else's section sounds like. I mean, to have that in your ears from an organic standpoint, where you're hearing all the elements of this band put together, 50, 60 some odd individuals with this one purpose, to bring this piece to the masses and have it elevated, elevate themselves as well as the audience. And to not have that osmosis that we all enjoy, from the bandstand on to the patrons that are sitting in front of us and back and forth, I think it's blasphemous. I've checked out various things that have gone down online, and I haven't desired to even go online, man. I dig some of the things, but at the same time, I just can't, I haven't.
I Yeah, I share the same sentiment. Um, you know, matter matters. You know, you know, the physical world is there for a particular reason. Proximity is not just an abstraction.
Yeah.
Proximity facilitates certain connections. Acoustics, you
Hmm.
know, being within a certain proximity, hearing the room, the way that it's not, any particular room is not symmetrical. And so the sound doesn't bounce symmetrically. And that's, it's part of the reason why different rooms sound different ways, playing in a certain section and the way that the intonation characteristics have an impact on the sound of the section. I mean, it's just all of this stuff is not possible to do online. You can't experience to that degree, and and I'm going to extend that not just in the as far as playing music, but going to church.
Yeah.
There is a
Well, you just hit the touchstone right there. That's the epitome of osmosis right there. Do you feel joy? Yeah. Do you feel it? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Ding, 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 ding. Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That call and response, you're not going to get that online. Let alone the delay sometimes. Which I mean, it's just not the same. And I know that I know that there there's a need or a desire to present the online thing as if it is some kind of adequate replacement for the real thing,
Mhm.
because people are trying to be positive about it. And if you if you totally downplay the online thing, then it's like it maybe they feel like it's going to make people feel even worse about what's going on. And at least we have technology, almost that kind of thing. But I, I don't think anybody is fooled, by that whole song and dance. We
Yeah.
all know the
And
difference
that's
between.
not,
Yeah,
by no means, I mean, it's just not my freaking cup of tea.
yeah,
I would basically say that prior to this year coming up, this year 2020, we would look at various things on Facebook, Instagram, where people had made posts like either after the gig or maybe somebody taking, some unwarranted footage while they're out in the audience or whatever, and
oh yeah,
that's more or less considered a snack or something like that. But it's at the same time we had access to go to the gig itself,
yeah. That's
and
right. That's right.
sometimes we as artists feel like, oh man, we gotta whatever. But that's something that we feel obligated to do after the main gig is going down. Now it's at a point where this somewhat of a bonus track is all of a sudden it's the main gig in some cases,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
we would
yeah,
post something online and it's up for it, and then you got to kick in the fact that some people are also using the cash apps and whatnot, and I'm kind of leery on that end too, because I would love for people to continue to say that, okay, this cat's on here playing this hard out. He's, obviously um, making up for a gig not being there, and he's using what the creators endowed him with. So you all need to dig in there deep, as if you were at Carnegie Hall or at these places that we have,
yeah,
have previously played, and give up the loot if it's possible. Of
yeah.
course, some people are just going to hang on to, hey, that's pretty cool, and, not feed the kidney, so to speak. and we eventually are going to go back into a probable 50%, venue thing where folks are going to be online, and I'm going to implement, whatever I see fit, in order to be online, and hopefully folks will be able to afford such, to be able to be there with us on the live feed or whatever, and those that are brave enough, God bless you, when you come out to check us out, because that's what we need is the people in the house that's going to make the thing happen. And
Yeah.
that's, of course, going to translate into those things online that people are going to see. It's going to make for a better online experience. And like I said, from Jump Street, my main thing as of right now is really been to keep financial things happening and to keep the infrastructure of my family cool out, because they're talking about these are uncertain times. It's hell of uncertain. I mean, not just from the viral aspect, but from the social aspect as well. But at the same time, there's optimism that in the midst of what recently happened with Brother Floyd, Sister Taylor, that people are seriously waking up from the outside, and other atrocities are being brought in, past and present, that haven't made the mainstream media. And there's a self-examination that's going on here. Hopefully there's a cleansing of one's palette of this ignorance and things, and hopefully through music as well as through other arts that have been displayed and continue to be displayed, that other people start seeing the light and start seeing the beauty of things as opposed to jacking it up, And I'll tell you one thing that recently happened, and I know there's probably going to be some folks that are going to hate or whatever, but hey, I saw it firsthand. This 5G thing that's popping off, I think is what's seriously amplifying this virus and whatnot. It's this past Saturday, we were at our driveway at like 7 o'clock in the morning, getting our daughter's car ready for her Jeep ready for this drive-by graduation that she was going to take part in. And over in the distance, there was a helicopter that was just hovering. And I called it a mosquito copter because on front it looks like a regular helicopter, but it had this protruding apparatus at the nose of the helicopter. It looks like a mosquito mandible, that would just go in and stick you and whatnot. But it was hovering over by this antenna that, of course, was for 5G and whatnot. And stayed there for over an hour and a half, hovering in that same place. And we would notice, and there was one particular time before we left out, we would notice I was saying that the birds that were around us started acting funny, and then at one particular point, birds within 2 blocks of us all flew west of this tower at the same time, and it didn't matter what species they were. All these birds and everything just went. So it was like this helicopter was basically probably remotely tuning the antenna. And if it's affecting the birds that way, what do you think it's doing to us?
Yeah.
All in the name of profit. But it's up to us to, as a people to say that, enough is enough on the commercial tip, on the social tip, and on the medicinal tip as well, And hopefully that'll be done, well, as Malcolm would say, the ballot or the bullet and all that. Hopefully we can still count on the ballot even if it's done electronically or through mail or whatever the case is. But I feel that hopefully there's a paradigm shift that's going to happen as a result, that all of us will be able to say that we took part in, and these passings and
these things weren't in vain.
Yeah, I've talked to my dad about the social unrest, and he's old enough to have experienced this several times, and almost everybody that I've talked to about this that's old enough to have remember, you know, somewhat similar kinds of occurrences with protesting associated with some particular event, where the usual thing that happens is there's a momentary sensitivity to, to actually make a change. And then it just ends up going back to the same thing again.
Yep.
But in this situation, yeah. But in this situation, it seems that people are saying that this seems different. And now I'm a realist, and so platitudes and a lot of talk is that doesn't do anything. I've heard a lot of talk. I've heard a lot of talk for my whole life. I've heard a lot of talk.
Yeah.
So I want to see some walk. When I start seeing some walk, then it's kind of like that's where I'm at with it. I'm a little bit of a doubting Thomas that way. But I'm hopeful. I do want to see, obviously, I do want to see something positive and meaningful and some real change come out of this.
I'm with you on that because, hey, it's one thing if it's us, but hey, we got kids now. And
right.
We definitely have to look at the fact that these kids were brought up in love and brought as an affirmation of love, within our family unit. And you don't want to subject them to anything outside of that, I mean, you got to be real at the same time, but you also have to let them know, and that's part of what my preoccupation is to let them know that you were brought up in love and that we're praying on a daily basis that all ignorance, malady, and despair is ordered away from you so that you can find whatever it is in the midst of all this that seems to be on the verge of being hopeless and whatnot, but to be able to say that God is still here, and I'm able to find my voice through Him by keeping that connection, and continuing to cultivate that connection amongst yourselves, because there's only so far we can take you in terms of that, but ultimately you're going to have to start talking, He's going to start talking to you, and then you're able to finesse what it is that you're here for. Why is it you're able to get up every, morning and have purpose? That's one of the main things that I try and give my son, or both of my kids, but in particular my son, to, get up and find your purpose, man. You already have things that you're doing, and that's what's going to keep you godlike. That's what's going to keep you at least on the path and to be able to be on the one with Him,
Yeah, our kids have an advantage that a lot of kids don't have, and that is, we got two parents in the house, and the influence of a strong father, someone that's going to say, "Hey, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, and I expect you to do this," that's a real blessing. I had that advantage. My dad and my mom. My dad and my mom are still together. They just celebrated 50 years of marriage last year, which is like mind-boggling. I don't even know. I don't even have a place to put that, because that's older than me. Because I'm 45, so they beat me by 5 years. So it's really incredible.
You really But the last idea was good, man. We was 51 would, come into my mix like this. Hey, there it is.
Hey, is there anything that's? I mean, I think we've had a great conversation here, and I think people are going to really dig what we talked about. I mean, we could keep talking. There's so many things, thousand things that we could talk about. But I wanted to ask you about the future. I know that many of the things that we have thought were going to be happening right now are not happening right now. And obviously that has an impact on what's going to happen in the future. But how about some projects or recent projects that you've recently released, or maybe some projects that that you're working on or were working on that you plan to release soon?
And it was live from Newport back in August 5th of 2018 to be exact. We dedicated the proceed to Harriet Blue, who at that particular time was a couple months prior to his passing. And basically the project was called Django Unchained, where we were playing things from my favorite gypsy, Mr. Django Reinhardt, and we were giving it a hood pass, basically giving it more urban grooves and superimposing the gypsy melodies and whatnot onto it. And it's gained some traction, and in addition to that, I've also have been performing within the classical idiom as well. In fact, had things stayed the same, I was on my way to Tanglewood next week to play with the orchestra there, doing the Sierra Concerto for saxophones that I recorded with the Symphony Warsawi in Poland about 10, 11 years ago. And in fact, when the COVID thing happened, I was actually on my way to Poland to celebrate the 36th anniversary of the Symphony Warsawi in Poland, and we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of us recording the concerto, and it got shut down because of the outbreak and whatnot, the lockdown that happened thereafter. So I'm going to continue those performances. I still have the idea that I want to do more with the Don Bias project that I was previously involved in as well. I also have my electric group where I'm playing with pedals and whatnot, and getting my frustrated guitarness, and just keeping my avenues open, if you will. Trying to get more back into more practicing and stuff, and really, because I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't been practicing. I've been doing, like I said, a lot more repairing and restoring of instruments, and that's kind of made me feel good in the sense that I've been looking at instruments 10, 20 some odd years that I've had my stewardship that I have yet to put into some semblance of work and order, and it's become like mental blights to me, and it's become to represent like a symbolism of things that are undone. You're holding on to these things, and if you're going to hold on to them, you at least have to put this mass of metal or wood into a playable condition where it's able to do what it's supposed to do. And when you do that, I feel alive as far as that goes, and it enables me to practice as well. And I've been able to bring out my double reeds and stuff again, and trying to get them back underneath the fingers. And so I'm trying to work it out, man, in the midst of all this, and trying to do what creators endowed me with, and not take it for granted. And hopefully this will help towards that, and for anybody else that's been feeling that way as well, too.
Well, James, thank you so much for your time and energy. I really appreciate your generosity with the information and a lot of the detail with which you're talking about. I mean, I think the our audience is going to really appreciate that and maybe get a little more of a glimpse inside who James Carter is. On another note, I I've been blessed by being able to talk to you this way, and I feel like I got to know you a little bit more. And honestly, that's the original reason and purpose for these interviews, is because kind of being sequestered like we all are, and away from the bandstand and away from other musicians and away from being able to have those kind of inside baseball kind of conversations, with folks. This has really been a blessing to me, and so I appreciate you for doing this. Yeah.
Likewise, I thank you for the forum, and we definitely have to realize that we've lost some individuals, whether it's COVID related or natural causes related. We've lost quite a few individuals that have been in the performing ranks prior to their transition, and I hope that has a result that we wind up coming together more as an artistic conglomerate, of individuals, where we're able to see each other and just say yo, and hopefully that'll manifest itself in the projects and the collaborations, or just weaving a tighter net where we're able to check in on each other, because a whole lot of these passes kind of caught me seriously off guard, and whether they were COVID related or not, gone is gone, and we have to pick up those pieces and remember those individuals and have that DNA in our system, whether we actually put it into our social lives or we use that on the bandstand. These individuals have to continue to live to let folks know that, hey, they were here, they existed, and we're going to continue to swing on for them.
Yeah. Yes, that is truer words have never been spoken. All right, man. Well, God bless you and your family. Be safe.
Hey,
and until next,
man, and we'll definitely be in touch. I have not forgotten about that Brio I was asking you about. Still hooked up with the My Heart?
I am.
Because that mug was a kick butt flute, and I'm kicking myself every day in the pants every time I think about it. And since I have you on here now I'm thinking about it again, thinking, dang it, I should have copped that mug. I should have copped it. Oh. But such is life.
Well,
we'll be in touch, man.
Yes, definitely. Well, you have a good one, man.
Hey, take care.
God bless you.